let's move on to the bad things of Japan. Number one reason Japan is bad. It's kind of a heavy subject, and I haven't seen anyone else really talk about it. It's not brought up very often, at least. And that is cones. I feel like I'm living in a dream. I just feel like, how is this real? I don't even believe it myself. And I catch myself a lot in those kind of moments living here, and it's just a wonderful thing. Happy days.
世界トップ YouTuber が日本に引っ越して感じたことについての動画を見てみるよ。Let's find out! こんにちは、全人類と友達になるとか僕がミスタービスです。そして
アナです。
アナです。
マルです。
今日のテーマはプリン世界トップ YouTuber ピューディーパイさんが日本に引っ越して感じたことの動画を見てみよう。
Japan review. Japan review.
Was it 1 year? 1 year since he moved here?
Yeah, it's been a year since he's moved here.
はい、皆さんピューディーパイってご存知ですか？
知ってます。
もちろん。
そう世界で本当に一番
になってました。
で1億1100万人登録者がいるよね。やばいよね。
Yes.
一人1円もらったら1億円もらえますね。
I mean, PewDiePie was like the number one YouTube for a variety of reasons, and number one is because of his gaming content. That was the first form of long content on YouTube, and then so he's the one who influenced the retention rate. Because like YouTube influences people who watch the video for the whole time, right? And since he was one of the first gaming YouTubers, they would watch the video from 1 minute all the way to 44 minutes, right? And the retention rate would like skyrocket. Therefore, YouTube would always recommend his channel.
なるほどね。ピューディーパイさんはどこに住んでたんだったっけ？
In Sweden, I think he moved though. He moved around in the UK to live with his girlfriend.
でそこから日本に引っ越してきたよね。
Yeah.
ですごくね。だって YouTuber 界のトップの人がなんで日本に引っ越してきたんっていうのも興味あるし、で日本に引っ越してしかも1年住み続けて今どう思ってるのかみたいな話を動画でねしてたので、それを今日はみんなで見て、あ、それそれって共感するのか、あ、そんなこと感じるのかみたいなことを話していければなと思ってます。それでは行ってみましょう。
Japan review. Japan review. It's been a year since I moved to Japan, and I thought it made sense to finally rate Japan. I was
Rate Japan.
and the things I don't like. But seems to be the only two options available if you have opinions about this country. Ah, Nihon desu. It's so sugoi. Or did you know Japan is actually really bad? It's got a lot of I will list one good thing and bad thing, and I will not hold back. There's no trash bins. Where am I gonna put my trash?
あ、もう始まってる。
I have to put it in my pocket? There's always these generic things that you hear, or yes, when you visit, it's kind of weird, but then you realize it's not a big deal. Anyway, let's start off with number one reason I like Japan. It feels like a giant playground. No, I don't mean in the Logan Paul kind of sense of...
No, definitely not.
やばいわ。
There's infinite things, or at least it feels like, to explore and experience.
Oh.
And I've been here a year now, and I don't think I'm going to get bored anytime soon, although I am having a child, so I don't know how much more I have.
True.
But it really feels like a whole new world, and if you visited, you can probably relate to it. And I'm glad that even a year in, it still feels incredibly fresh. And I even would say that you realize that the best part of Japan aren't the touristy places.
Oh, it's true.
Hey, you made it!
There's so many areas that I found that I really enjoy visiting, and this is probably more specific to me, but you know, Tokyo is very busy, and so many times I just catch myself surrounded by what feels like hundreds of people, and they have no idea who I am. And that feels so fucking good. No one's staring at me. No one's following me. Weird. You guys are weird. I just love the feeling of being able to exist in public and not worrying about what everyone else is doing. Like I've said this before, but I genuinely enjoy talking to fans or when people approach me. It always makes me happy, but it can be kind of frustrating to always wanting to just do your own thing and always be, you know?
It's very fun because most foreigners have the opposite experience when they move to Japan. Because like well, not so much now, and especially not in Tokyo, but if you're a foreigner, you stand out a lot, and you stand out way more than you do in your country. So if you're an Ippanjin, you actually get the feeling that people stare at you and try to talk to you more than they would do in your own country. But because he's a very famous person, like the most subscribed YouTuber, and everyone in Western countries know him, he would always get fans trying to talk to him. But in Japan, he doesn't.
確かにだって世界で一番有名な YouTuber っつってもおかしくないのに日本人ほぼほぼ知らないもんね。確かにね。
いろいろところ行けるからずっとなんていうの遊べる場があります。飽きれない。
Yeah, it's like, you know, everywhere you see there's a game center, there's karaoke, there's things to do, right? And so it's like things that you don't really have to go out of your way to enjoy personally. So that's why it feels like a big playground to us.
あとまだいろいろところ行けるところがあってまだ全部日本探索でやってないからなんかプレイグラウンドみたいに遊べる Most of the foreigners only come for like a week so most of them you just go to the popular tourist spots and you feel oh これ遊びようそれだけだねっていう感じでも1年間住んでたらもっといろんなところ行けるよっていう
で地域によっても結構色が違ってくるもんね。
そういう意味ですね。
北海道行ったりとか沖縄行ったりとか。
It's always new. Everything is brand new experience.
Let's move on to the bad things of Japan. Number one reason Japan is bad. It's kind of a heavy subject, and I haven't seen anyone else really talk about it. It's not brought up very often, at least. And that is cones.
どういうこと？
There's too many. You cannot unsee it. They're everywhere. They say, oh, Japan has so many vending machines. There's like 5 per 1 person. No, the opposite. There's more cones than people. Why are there so many cones? I need to know. We got the small ones. We got the funny ones, the cute ones, the sexy ones. I just don't understand. Did whoever placed these cones think I'm just going to barge through? Oh, thank God there's cones here. And I realized the cone history of Japan stretches centuries, okay? If you played Animal Crossing, sometimes it's a Japanese game, so sometimes you get these items, right? And you're like, oh, that's kind of weird. I don't know exactly what that is. But it's probably something Japanese. And then you get the bamboo thing, and you're like, what the hell is that? What am I even going to do with that? And then you see it in real life. It's a cone. That's a cone. They're everywhere. Like they are following me. I'm glad I was able to talk about this. I'm, for one, I'm willing to call out Japan. Knock it off, man.
The anime cones.
待ってどういうこと？いいやんコーン多くても。
まあ、からぶつけとか。
ふざけたよね。
ふざけてる。
I mean, like, he has a point there.
True.
You have a lot of points.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I've never seen that perspective brought up until he pointed it out.
ちょっと待ってコーンは多いの本当に。
結構いいな。
言われたら、いや、確かに。
Now that he brought it up, it's like, oh yeah, I guess there are a lot. So like, especially on like streets, like on roads and stuff like that, it's like, I guess it's like a necessary thing to direct traffic and stuff like that. You need a lot of cones, but like it's funny how many like kinds of cones there are.
Yeah.
Right, like you're saying the happy cones or like the normal cones.
Kawaii one.
There's like the silly cones with like, the characters, right?
Yeah.
The anime cones?
Yeah. There's sometimes like the cones with like an actual like construction guy. You know, like, there's a lot of different cones.
言われたらそうね。
Yeah. It's just an interesting
いや、
perspective.
面白い。
めっちゃドキドキした。
Alright, reason number 2, I like Japan. Yay. When we first announced that we were going to move to Japan, there was so many people just saying how bad Japan is. Actually, did you know Japan is really bad? Did you know this? I have to list all these reasons now because everyone is like, thing, and then thing Japan. Ah! So I have to tell them, and it's actually... But one thing in particular that people said was that old people really don't like Ford. They hate them. So when I was going to stop by to say hi to our neighbors, who was a little older, at least some of them, I was terrified. I heard all these stories, you know? What are they going to do to us? So I had my guard up, ready for the worst, and I was met with nothing but kindness and welcoming, and I felt like a total dick for having these preconceived ideas. Thanks to other people. Just a side comment, like, yes, there are definitely, probably, people that don't like foreigners and all that stuff. But I realized I should let my own experiences dictate how I feel about certain things. Maybe that's just ignoring a problem, I don't know. It just feels like it's a bad way to approach life if you always have a negative expectation. You know? It's smile and people may smile back. Smile back. And sometimes they don't, and that's okay, you know? Anyway, my point being, Japanese people are very, in my own experience, are very nice and friendly. The majority, at least. And yes, even to foreigners. I feel like they're especially nice to foreigners because they think we're like a kid lost at Disneyland.
Wow.
I just asked for directions. I didn't need you to walk me for half an hour. Thank you. I appreciate it. A lot of times I go bouldering alone and there's always other groups of people being supportive and yelling like, "Ganbatte!" Like, I love it. I think it's great. You know, or if you're small talking to people, people genuinely want to communicate with you, and I love having those moments. But of course, there's times where people are like, "Oh, you're a foreigner, I don't feel like even trying." Which I get, it's fine. Speaking of which, reason I don't like Japan, number 2, the language. I'm here for a year, and I'm not fluent in Japanese. I am dumb. I am very dumb. I remember the moment we moved here, I had studied some Japanese, and I was like, let's test out this knowledge
There we
that
go.
I've acquired. Let's go. I'm just going to come in. It's going to be daijoubu.
Yeah.
Enter a store for the first time, and they're like, Fukuro ga ryo desu ka?
Minna.
What? The classic, the most common experiences that you have aren't necessarily what you're taught in the textbook. I think that's the same for anyone learning a language for the first time. But don't even get me started on the kanji, man. What the fuck is that? I feel like Japanese is such a hard language, obviously. But I don't think people realize how hard it is, at least me personally, because the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know shit.
True.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's considered one of the most difficult languages, and because it's just so different. I listed it as bad because that was my first kind of experience with it coming here. But the more I interact with people, the more it feels like I'm unlocking new skills, you know? Oh, I made a phone call for the first time. I could ask someone over the phone. I know, big deal. But it's like, oh, I can actually do that. Or even just having a small, tiniest, shittiest conversation with a stranger. It's still something, and it feels good. You start to all of a sudden understand, you know, a movie. If you're watching, oh, I understand actually what's going on here. Or I can play games and kind of get what they're saying. I have to look up words, obviously, but to me, all those new experiences that it unlocks to me is very rewarding. Even though it's such a challenge, I would actually now say it's a good thing. Ha! I played it on its head. It was a good thing all along. But I obviously have a long fucking way to go.
Yes, indeed.
I don't think it would ever stop.
お年寄りの人は外国人があんま好きじゃないって前は聞いてたけど来たらそんなことなかったみたいなこと言ってる。そう多分お年寄り関係なく外国人に対してこうちょっと冷たいと思われる人は、まあ、嫌いっていうよりもどう接していいか分かんないのがなんか大きい気がするよね。どうしたらいいのみたいなのがちょっと冷たく見えちゃうような気はしてるけど、
5年間住んでる中で何百の体験してから、ガチうわってなったのは1回だけなんで、それに対してもう500以上の体験の中でやっぱり優しいなって感じだったので、
まあ、僕も何年か過ごしてたら何回かやべえなこいつって思う現状がいるから
まあ全然優しい。
ああそうなんや。
そうそうほとんどは優しい。
どういう時に優しさって感じるんやろうね。
まあさっきピューディパイも言ったように like when you ask for directions and you show them and you can't even communicate because you don't have the same language yet they just take you by hand and they just lead you for 30 minutes walk to where you needed to go.
日本語のとこどう思った？
I think that he's right in that aspect, but it is such a difficult language. Even though you go here with absolutely nothing and then you try to learn in a year, you're not going to get anywhere in a year. It's going to take you at least like 3 or 4 to get fluent.
There's a lot of things doesn't written in the textbooks.
Yeah.
Right. Well, there's like that thing, right, where it's like the learning curve, or like the level of competency. It's like when you're just starting out and you gain a little bit of knowledge, like, oh, like I really have this, right? And and then you get to like this stage of intermediate level kind of thing, and then you realize, oh no, I know nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And then you fall like a bit past intermediate, and you fall into like a pit of despair of like, oh my god, I know so little.
Yeah.
And you feel so terrible about yourself, and only from there like you like start to climb back out of it kind of thing.
Right,
So
right.
it's, you know, for people who are learning as a second language, it's going to be a never-ending challenge, right?
Right. I mean, so we're still all working on our Japanese to an extent, right?
Right.
I made this comparison before, but studying Japanese feels like you have like a 1,000-meter pool that's deep, and that's the amount of Japanese you can learn. And every time you study for 8 hours, you have like a tiny paper cup, and boop. That's how it feels. That's how it feels to study Japanese.
ちなみにめちゃくちゃ難しい漢字、使いませんから
Yeah, yeah.
僕嬉しかったのは PewDiePie さんは本当にちゃんと日本語をこの1年間勉強したんだなって分かったのはみんなと言ってることを全く一緒だったから
Yeah.
だから日本語がちょっとこう分かったら嬉しいなみたいな感じを言ってたからなんか嬉しいなと思って
Reason number 3, I like Japan. This has nothing to do with Japan to say. It's more related to me taking a more relaxed approach to YouTube. For my entire 20s, I did nothing but YouTube. That was my life, and that's okay. But I also think it was a little toxic, probably. You know, if I wasn't making videos, I sure as hell was thinking about making videos. I uploaded videos during our honeymoon. And it feels really good to finally be free from it, you know? And I can discover other things in life. There are other things in life. New hobbies and interests that I've always wanted to do. I can do and have so much fun with it. Surfing, I know I would love for the longest time, and I finally get to do it. And it's so fucking amazing. I love learning new things. Anything that isn't necessarily connected to all of this on the internet. And that is something I'm very, very grateful that I discovered. So yeah, it's not really Japan. I could have done that anywhere. But it's largely why I enjoy it so much here. Reason I don't like Japan number 3, this is probably the most trickiest one, and it's the rules. What are the rules? Japan has so many rules. It's a bit conflicting for me to complain about because a lot of the best stuff about Japan, not the best stuff, but a lot of the reasons why Japan works so well is because of the rules. You know, the trains are always on time. Things just work in general. It's hard to explain. The streets are clean. People aren't loud in public, and so on. And these are sort of societal rules that make it happen, more or less. But sometimes there are rules that just don't make any sense. And I have no problem following rules as long as I understand the reason for it, you know? Phone on the train, because it's generally annoying when other people do that to you. A lot of it is just be thoughtful of other people. It's not just about you. And that just makes it more pleasant for everyone. But one rule especially, which I talked about before, is the fact that because of COVID, I'm not allowed to be in the delivery room for our baby for more than 2 hours. That's because of COVID rules. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I tell people about this, like family and friends, and they're always like, well, why don't you just ask them? Or like, why don't you talk to them? Sure, there's gotta be some way. And it's like, no, it's Japan, okay? And people follow the rules, for better or worse, you know? So the more time I spend here, the more time I encounter these sort of rules that, in my head at least, don't make sense. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm above it or like, oh, I don't get it, so therefore I'm above it. But it's still really frustrating, I think. Because, yeah, rules exist for a reason, and even though the reason might not be obvious to you, they are usually there for some sort of practicality. I don't know. I'm just trying. I don't get it, man.
I think that there is one of the reasons that stands in for a lot of foreigners who end up leaving Japan after living here for a few years. Because in a lot of countries outside of Japan, even the rules are more like guidelines. And it's like if you talk with the person in charge or you do certain things, you can kind of get around them. But like that doesn't happen in Japan. As PewDiePie was saying too, like the fact that Japan has so many rules is one of the main reasons that things just work so nicely and you have clean streets and everything.
Yeah.
But one of the downside to that is that you can't get around even the stupid rules. Well, the rules that you might find stupid because the Japanese mentality is ルールだからしょうがない.
Yeah.
It's like you don't think about changing the rules unless there's some major event that might want to make you change them.
そうね。確かに僕もこのルール何って思うことは結構ある。多分日本人の考え方ってこういう悪いことが起きたらいけないから起きたかどうかは別にしてもうやらないようにしようみたいな結構幅を広めにルール作ったりするよね。だから誰もそんなん困ってないじゃんって思うかもしれないけど困るかもしれないじゃんって言われたらそれはもうそれはそう言われたらみたいな感じで広めにルール作ってる感じがするから電車で電話しちゃいけないっていうのはなんでって今はもう思う人もいるけどあれがルールで禁止されてるから電車の中は静かみたいな面もあるから間を取っていけたらなっていうのは正直日本人も思ってる僕も。
I mean, a lot of Japanese people think about like a risk kaihi, right? To eliminate the risk as much as possible. So they have all of the like these rules and tax. It's like okay, it's like a 10% chance that this could happen, but what about 0% chance of happening?
In the West, if you order something at a restaurant, it's totally normal to like make changes to like the menu or something like that, right? But in Japan, I remember one time I was like, "Can I have like more eggs than the two that they give you?" And they were like, or something like that. On the one hand, it's like, you know, that's fine. If that's restaurant's rules, like I understand. Like if you give people the opportunity to like stray away from the menu, then there could be like quality control issues, right? Correct. So I totally understand that. But at the same time, if you're cracking 2 eggs anyway, just add 2 more.
Yeah.
But I totally understand like for the frustration, right? Because you're not breaking a rule. You're just kind of adjusting some things, right? But I totally get it. After being here for a few years now, I now understand and I appreciate the rules.
Yeah, I just stopped complaining about it and accepted it instead.
Yeah.
That's the best thing to do.
Because as soon as
The Japanese way.
As soon as you accept it, it's like that's when inner peace truly, truly comes.
バイロンがまともなこと言ってる。
What am I gonna do? Like think like this is America? It's not.
It's not, yeah,
まあね。
It's not America.
So, lastly, the reason I like Japan. I feel like there should be a word for it. It's more of a feeling than anything, and it's could be happening at any point during the day. Maybe I'm riding a bicycle. It's sunny outside and surrounded by trees, and it's just pleasant in general.
Okay.
A warm wind hits your face, and you just sort of have that moment where it feels just so amazing. It feels like you're living a dream. It could be just walking my dogs, and then out in the distance, everything is clear, and you see Mount Fuji popping out. You know, I'm surfing, and the sun is setting, and it's turning the whole ocean to look pink. And it's just one of those moments where you feel like I'm living in a dream. I just feel like, how is this real? I don't even believe it myself. And I catch myself a lot in those kind of moments living here, and it's just a wonderful thing. Happy days. I feel really silly talking about it because it's not like these things don't exist anywhere for anyone. It's not like, oh, Japan. But moving here, I feel like I definitely get those moments more often. It's not like I wasn't happy in UK or wherever, but I think just in general, it has changed me and my priorities and as a person to the better in a weird way. And I realize a lot of it is also very specific to me and my circumstance. I have the opportunity to not work as much anymore, and I have the opportunity to have a lot of freedom and not engage in a lot of the bad parts of the tough work ethic in Japan, for example. And so I think me specifically feeling like I don't get recognized, so that's also a reason I really enjoy here. A lot of the reasons I enjoy Japan is very specific to me, at least. And people like Japan for different reasons, obviously. I'm not surprised or necessarily think people are wrong to try to dispel Japan from being this holy mecca or anything like that, but I think ultimately it's an amazing place to visit. You should definitely do it. But I also think not everyone's going to enjoy living here. That's my big asterisk, basically. I feel like if you're content as a person, you should be able to be happy where you live. At least for me, for example, living in UK, I was just as happy as well. But like I said, catch myself in these happy moments more often here, which I'm very grateful for. So yeah, I hope that sort of summarizes it. I would put Japan S tier. Thank you very much. Brofist.
Brofist.
Great.
褒められすぎててちょっとどうしようかっていう気持ちになって今日ちょっと真面目な回になるかなと思って見たらだいぶ褒めてくれてたよね。でもなんかあの動画って日本人向けにもちろん作った動画じゃなくて海外の人向けにピューディーパイさんが作った動画じゃん、その中で日本人が見るわけでもないのに日本のことをめっちゃ褒めてくれてるのってもうすごい嬉しいなっていう気持ちになったのかな。
Right. I think the last thing he said is like it's important to be happy and content wherever you live, right? Because I think not a lot of people, but like maybe people on the internet who have this idea of Japan as like this amazing place kind of thing, and there are lots of amazing things about it. But I think the last thing people should do is like run away from the problems they have in their own country, going to Japan and think that's going to solve it, right? Because if anything, like there are very challenging things about living here, and if you yourself aren't secure and have a solid sense of your own self and are content and secure, if you don't have that and you come here with no support network in the language, you have no idea what's going on, you're going to have a hell of a time, right? But I think what he did was present a very realistic picture of what it's like to live in Japan. Even though he is a very unique situation, if people were to listen to this advice and kind of come to the conclusion like, oh, I want to come to Japan or don't, I think that he gave a good review of Japan, I guess.
普通に散歩したりとか、外出たりするのってなんか緑に溢れてるみたいなイメージがあるの。
全然同意するんですよその話、でも原因が分からないんですけど、ただ歩く時にめっちゃ感動すること結構あるんですよ日本で。理由が分かんないけどフィーリングでって。なんか歩いてて気持ちいいな見たら、めっちゃいい景色なとよくあるんですよ日本で。
What I personally think is that in Japan there's a lot of opportunities for you to hear white noise, right? Like there's no distractions from like the city, the bustling city of like horns honking or like lights flickering or like noises in the city. Because if I live in LA, that's all I hear, beep beep, people yelling at each other. That's normal to me. But in Japan, there's a lot of places where you walk at night, it's completely silent, completely silent. Whether you're in nature, whether like you're in the city, whether you're just like in the suburbs, there's so many opportunities for you to go like
For example, sometimes I just ride a bike and just go around randomly, anything without a Google map or something. I just ride around the city or something and just look at the scenery and stuff and just feel so good.
Just walking around,
It's really hard to break your peace.
Yes.
Especially like if you live in the countryside. Like when I was living in Kagawa, I would like go for a bike ride, like you're saying, just to random areas and just kind of sit by like a creek or something like that and be like
just get an ice cream and just eat it and just look at us.
Or just like look at the mountains, like the sunset in the background and you go, damn.
Exactly.
Yeah. はい、ということで今日は世界トップ YouTuber のピューディーパイさんが日本に引っ越してきて、1年経った時の気持ちの動画を見てみました。なんかちょっと照れくさいねやっぱりもうこのチャンネルのテーマでもある全人類と友達になるっていうのがあるからまあいいところはねめちゃくちゃ言ってもらったからそこは伸ばして、まあ、ちょっとここはルールがきつすぎるかなみたいなところはいろいろね考えてまた直していけたらもっとみんなが友達になる世界が近づくんじゃないでしょうか。Maybe でかすぎるはい、他に僕らにリアクションしてほしい動画があればコメント欄までよろしくお願いします。
お願いします。
それでは次の動画でまたお会いしましょう。バイバイ。チャンネル登録
お願い。
まつ